Horror can do a lot of things. It can creep you out, it can absolutely terrify you, it can make you laugh and more. But one thing a lot of folks seem to come back for is the most disturbing stuff. On a base level, things that cause absolute revulsion tend to stick out in people's memories. Images get burned into your mind, especially if they're truly perverse. So today we're gonna count down the top 5 most disturbing scenes in horror movies. Take this as your warning, it's gonna get pretty upsetting, and I'm not gonna talk about like slaughtered vomit dolls or August Underground because those are like entire movies of disturbing scenes. Alright, let's get started. Coming in at number 5, we've got Supper Time from Audition. Takashi Miike's career is jam-packed with all sorts of top-tier disturbing moments. There's something he sees that most people don't, so he puts it to film for everyone else to enjoy. Well, actually, I don't know if enjoy is the right word. Regardless, the extreme and nasty stuff he manages to push out into the world is deeply affecting for all who behold it, so it's definitely worth a mention here. I may or may not have put 2 Miike films on this list, so if you have a guess as to the second, drop it down in the comments right now, and we'll see if you're right when we get to it. But before we get to the other stuff, we should probably talk about the current entry, right? Okay, so Audition, a famously upsetting movie that starts out pretty innocuously. A widower is convinced by his son to seek a new wife and decides the best way to go about this is to hold auditions for the role. Kinda weird, but you know, what can you do? He gets his casting agent friend to set up some mock auditions so he can find out all the info he needs before trying to date these women, and eventually becomes infatuated with Asami. She seems like a perfect choice. At first, anyways. Over time, however, her dark past starts to affect the relationship. She starts acting strangely and our protagonist begins to wonder if something sinister is going on. She disappears for a while, leading to the widower attempting to find her and discovering that plenty of the places she used to frequent have pretty gruesome histories, often involving dismemberment. Uh-oh. Now, a lot of folks say that the wire torture scene is the most disturbing part of Audition. And yes, that is a truly upsetting scene to behold. But the flashback with the man in the bag is on a whole other level. My goodness, it's nasty. So in the flashback, we see that Asami had at one point kept a man in a large bag. He was missing his feet, a number of fingers, and his tongue. Worst of all, she only seemed to feed him one type of food via doggy bowl. Any guesses as to what that kind of food was? It was her vomit. Oh no. And for all of those who like to pay close attention, you might notice that this dude has no problem whatsoever consuming this puke immediately after it's placed in front of him. Which implies that she's had him here, helpless and hungry, eating vomit for an extended period of time. He is used to it at this point. The implications of this scene are stomach-turning to say the least. Supper time indeed. Coming in at number 4, we've got First, The Kids from The House That Jack Built. Speaking of directors with a penchant for the disturbing, here's a movie directed by Lars von Trier. He's made himself quite the career in crafting incredibly intense movies. They're not for everyone, that's for sure. Really, you could pull a scene from pretty much any of his features and it would fit on this list, but I keep coming back to The House That Jack Built. Every kill is so carefully tailored to cause a different kind of visceral reaction. As you see this serial killer recount his kills in chronological order, you can see him choose different personas to use while pulling off his crimes. The sociopathic behavior allows for some absolutely nutty kills to happen, from the carjack to the dome, to the home invasion under charmingly false pretenses, all the way to the penultimate moment when Jack has a bunch of dudes tied up in the freezer. But the most disturbing has to be when he brings a young family into his orbit. Playing the role of the caring father figure, he convinces the mother of 2 that he's a good, solid guy that'll help raise her kids, and who wouldn't want that, right? So he brings them to the middle of nowhere on a supposed hunting trip. But this trip is really just a thinly veiled excuse to bring the trio away from society while also having access to guns. Boy, this one takes a turn. For the majority of their time in nature, he's friendly and dependable, but eventually this veneer fades away and the mother and her boys are left with a vicious murderer. He hunts them from a wooden pulpit at the edge of a field, forcing them to take cover. The mom tries to keep her boys close and covered, but one panics and runs away. Boom, he's shot dead. The second one is quick to follow, leaving Jack alone with Mother Dearest. After propping up the tiny corpses, he makes her have a picnic with him. Really despicable stuff. Coming in at number 3, we've got Hooks and Hot Oil from Ichi the Killer. And we're back to Miike. Unlike Audition, Ichi the Killer is cartoonish in its execution, which allows the viewers to put a little bit of space between themselves and what's happening on screen. This shouldn't be too surprising considering that this movie is based on a manga. So when all sorts of depraved, bloody, nasty stuff happens, it feels sort of otherworldly. It's so obviously not real that it can become super over the top and ends up as a bit of a spectacle. But there is one torture scene carried out by the masochistic, bleach blonde Yakuza tough Kakihara. After his boss goes missing, he captures the hapless Suzuki under the impression that he's the one who kidnapped him. The torture that ensues is unbelievably painful. First, he sticks hooks into the dude's back and suspends him from the ceiling. And when he's hanging there defenseless, he pierces his cheeks with chopsticks. From there, more chopsticks are inserted into more painful areas until eventually it's time for tempura. See, he's had some shrimp frying up this whole time and doesn't want the leftover oil to go to waste. So he pours the bubbling oil all over the hanging man's bare back, causing his skin to bubble and burst. It's not just the image that makes this hard to watch either, it's the sound of it all too. You might accidentally remember this scene next time you're cooking, which really isn't the best way to enjoy your food. Plus, it turns out that the poor torture victim was innocent after all, so Kakihara cuts off the tip of his tongue to make up for it. Sure, that makes it all better. Coming in at number 2, we've got Skinned Alive from Martyrs. If you ask the average internet user what the most disturbing movie of all time is, a lot of the time you will get the answer Martyrs, and for good reason. Other disturbing classics like Salo, a Serbian film, and The Men Behind the Sun will often get mentioned too, but there's something extra special about the French extremist flick. It could be the sympathetic characters, or maybe it's the wild gut punch of discovery when the demon is revealed to be something unexpected, followed by the hidden lab beneath the house opening up. Could be the bleak, depressing message too. But of course, folks are gonna wanna talk about the horrific torture sequences most of all. And what better bit to bring up than the total lack of skin? Yeah, after intense mental degradation and many brutal beatings, poor Anna is flayed alive. All of her skin, gone. And she survives. So we get an eyeful of her musculature, down to the most grisly details. And she can see something that the rest of humanity cannot thanks to her near-death martyred state. What that might be, we can't really know. But whatever she told Mademoiselle while in this state was bleak enough to cause her to end her own life immediately. So there's that. And finally at number 1, we've got the tortoise from Cannibal Holocaust. So you might want to skip this one if you have issues with animal torture. Like the rest of the scenes up until this one are gross and tough to watch, but it was all done via special effects using actors who knew exactly what they were doing. Cannibal Holocaust, on the other hand, is famously real. So if it sounds like that might be too much, take the rest of the day off. Filmed as a pseudo-documentary detailing the exploits of a film crew that discovers the lost film canisters from the previous explorers who were there to learn about the local cannibal tribes, we see a lot of nasty stuff. The stuff captured by the original crew is so disturbing, so upsetting and violent that the original TV station that was gonna air it watches this footage and decides to destroy all the footage. Now, a lot of the human-based violence here is horrifying. It is an exploitation film after all, but that's all done with actors and special effects. The animals that die in this movie, though, that's all for real. And one of the most upsetting scenes involves the dismemberment of a live tortoise. Instead of killing it outright and then doing the limb removal afterwards, the folks end up truly torturing this innocent creature. One of the actors even ended up having a breakdown after the scene wrapped, and really, I don't know what else to say about this one. So hopefully nobody's too disturbed after all that. Lots of gnarly, gruesome stuff out there if you know where to look. So what'd you think of the list? Do you agree with the ranking? What scenes disturb you the most? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more collaborative ones from the top 5 SCP monsters that come at night. Draymations TV says SCP-1353 seems pretty creepy. I might just do an SCP animation on it. I think that's a good idea. Lancelot's Words says, I've got nothing against bugs or hugs, but a bug hug is not what I would dream of. What, not even on your insides? Joe says, is Naruto replacing Keegan? Date Bayo? Derek May says, the Exploring series is a good YouTube channel for SCPs. I'd have to agree, lots of good stuff over there. And Sherry Cooper says, a coin-eating dragon or lizard. That thing would be 500 pounds after eating all the change in my purse and car. Sounds like you should probably gather all that up. Maybe head down to the vending machine and grab some chips. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to call someone for a 3 a.m. challenge. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cannibal Holocaust. Instead of killing it outright, they end up doing the limb removing right. Nope, that doesn't make sense.